Good afternoon, everyone. Dear friends, teure versammelte Freund, thank you so much for joining us today. A hartzigen Dank für sein mit uns heint. Before we begin, I would like to ask folks who are joining us live on Facebook to invite friends who might want to join us, or start a watch party, or tag your friends, or like our event on your timeline. Just to repeat, it would be helpful if you're watching this on Facebook, please tag your friends, like the event on your timeline, or start a watch party of our gathering. Thank you. On behalf of our sponsoring organizations, the Congress for Jewish Culture, Friends of the Jewish Labor Bund, the Jewish Labor Committee, the Workers' Circle, and the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research, I'm honored to welcome you to our annual memorial gathering that we are holding online this year, marking the 77th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. We'd like to welcome those of you who have attended our gatherings at Der Stein, Yiddish for the stone, in past years, and those of you who may be joining us for the first time. Our program is being live streamed to Facebook and will be available for viewing on Facebook and YouTube after the event is over. During these unprecedented times of the COVID-19 pandemic, we felt it was more important than ever to continue to commemorate the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Every day of life in the Warsaw Ghetto was filled with constant horror and the possibility of death at any moment. Although the future was uncertain, our brothers and sisters conducted Pesach Seders, opened schools and libraries, gathered for services, held musical and theatrical performances, and attempted to continue living in some semblance of what life was like before the war. They did this not as an expression of denial, but as a powerful message of resistance. Every day of survival was a form of resistance, that the Nazis had not succeeded in exterminating our people. Similarly, this year, we felt strongly that despite being quarantined at home, despite having our lives turned upside down, despite the uncertainty of the future, despite all of this, our annual gathering must take place. Many of us are children of survivors, yet we can only begin to comprehend the smallest fraction of the fear, the horror, and despair that the Holocaust embodied. Yes, we were born from suffering, but we were also born from heroism. We gather today in the face of a grim political climate that assaults our values, but strengthens our resolve to fight for what we believe. We invite you, when you can, to visit Der Stein, located at 83rd Street and Riverside Park in New York City, where we normally hold our memorial. And please, lay a flower as we normally do at the end of our annual gathering, and as Fagala Jacobs did on our behalf this morning. Let me tell you a bit about our regular gathering place. Der Stein is a flat stone embedded in pavement and encircled by iron grating. As Arthur Crystal described it, quote, "The stone is not particularly imposing. The site draws little attention, and most people pass by without stopping. But afternoons of April 19, the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the stone, or Der Stein as it is known, hosts a gathering of survivors and their children. It is an unobtrusive ceremony in an out-of-the-way spot, and yet it seems more authentic than the grand and crowded demonstrations that take place in halls and synagogues, attended by dignitaries and politicians. At Der Stein, people do not come to visit the past. They come because they remain part of the past," end quote. Der Stein does not derive its poignancy from its grandeur, nor from the fact that it is a temporary marker embedded there in 1947 as a promise that a permanent tribute to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising would later be built. Der Stein derives its meaning from us, because it represents unspeakable horror and magnificent heroism, because it possesses the silent scream of death and the determination to fight against all odds, and to be able to say, we will choose the moment of our death, not the Nazis. Today is April 19th, same as it was on this date 77 years ago when the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began. The 19th marked the beginning of an epic battle, not for victory, as the resistance fighters knew from the outset, but for the honor of our people. On the walls of the ghetto, they posted an 11th commandment, thou shalt not despair. It was their watchword and their legacy. At 2 a.m., lookouts spotted the German artillery approaching the ghetto, and they entered the ghetto at 4 a.m. By 7 in the morning, their battalions were in position inside and outside the walls of the ghetto. The Nazis used the intersection at Mila and Zamenhof streets to stage their assault, intentionally, while everyone slept. But the band of resistance fighters were waiting for them, hidden behind barricades at the four corners of the intersection. They suddenly opened fire with handmade Molotov cocktails and shots from their lone machine gun. Soon the street was littered with the bodies of Nazis. This is how it began 77 years ago today. And when the battle ended, Marek Edelman, one of the leaders of the Jewish fighting organization, wrote, quote, on May 10, 1943, this period of our bloody history, the history of the Warsaw Jews, came to an end. The site where the buildings of the ghetto once stood became a ragged heap of rubble, reaching 3 stories high. Those who were killed in action had done their duty to the end, to the last drop of blood that soaked into the pavements of the Warsaw Ghetto. We who did not perish, leave it to you to keep their memory alive forever, end quote. We are their legacy. We carried their message, which today is more important than ever. To resist oppression, to resist anti-Semitism, hatred, intolerance, and the dehumanization of groups of people. Instead, we devote ourselves to embodying and building a just, more perfect world, a schönere und bessere Welt. We make the decision to come together today as a community and continue to return year after year to remember and to remind the world so it never forgets. Today, we also honor the life and memory of 2 members of our Bund family who passed away 2 days ago. First, our beloved Michael Baron, who served as director of Camps Hemshech and Kindering, fought against the Germans in the Red Army, and was part of the liberation force that freed Camp Majdanek. He taught generations of children to honor the memory of those who perished and those who fought during the Holocaust, and to treasure their cherished Yiddish language and culture. We also remember our dear Rebecca Pat, who is a good friend of the Bund and always attended our annual gatherings at Der Stein. We send our love and deepest sympathy to both families. Our parents and grandparents sang Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst den letzten Weg, as they faced certain death. Never say, this is the end of the road. And indeed, we are here because our journey has not ended. Our journey does not end until every person knows the story and the lessons of the Holocaust. Our journey does not end because their fight is our fight. Our journey does not end because the hatred that sparked the Holocaust continues in so many places. Our journey does not end until every life flourishes in freedom. Wir seien da. Noch einmal und Tage noch einmal, again and again, da ve da, generation to generation. This is our legacy. May the invincible soul of those who perished and those who survived inspire us to be compassionate and to have the wisdom to find peace within and build peace among nations. The price of freedom is far less dear than the price of forsaking it. Long live their blessed memories. Kavod Zayrondenk. We welcome as our first speaker, Professor David Fishman. David is professor of Jewish history at the Jewish Theological Seminary, whose most recent book is The Book Smugglers, Partisans, Poets, and the Race to Save Jewish Treasures from the Nazis. David?
Thank you, Marcel. And thank you to Shane Baker and to all the organizations and all the people who are involved in maintaining this beautiful tradition of the annual gathering at the Stein. I think for many of us, including myself, somehow at this gathering we feel much closer to the fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto. Many of us knew them, some of them, and there's a lot of meaning for this gathering, much far beyond its numbers. I guess in today's special circumstances, we can say, bei uns allen steckt der Stein in Hals und es liegt der Stein auf dem Herzen. There's a stone in all of our hearts today and in this difficult time. I've been struggling whether I should speak Yiddish or English. I'm going to do a combination, but I think I'll speak more English than Yiddish to make sure everyone understands. Yes, April 19th is the date of the great uprising beginning in Warsaw. But the songs that we'll hear, I'm sure we'll hear, and that the songs that are sung at this event and at so many events, Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg, and the Jugendhymnen, Unser Lied ist voll mit Treue, the songs were written not in Warsaw, but in Vilna. So we have a city that was the city of the great armed uprising, and a city of the songs of resistance and uprising, being Vilna. And I think these two anthems, these two hymns, really capture two aspects of resistance to the Nazis. Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg is the anthem of armed resistance. It is das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand, the song sung with rifles in our arms. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut, the song that's written with blood. That is the anthem of fighters. But the Jugendhymn, written also in the Vilna Ghetto, both written in the Vilna Ghetto by young partisans. The Jugendhymn is the song saying, Dreist ist unser Muntergang. We're marching with fortitude, with courage. Jung ist jeder, wer es will nur. Anyone can be young. It is a song about the indomitable human spirit and the indomitable Jewish spirit. And of course, one of its important lines is, Ewig werden wir verbinden unser Nächten mit den Heinz. This is a song not about guns, but it's a song about the internal spirit and about connecting our past, our Jewish past, with our present and future. So what I'd like to argue to you today is we need the song of the ghetto. Sometimes we need the sound of the gun, but the sound of fighting should be combined and united with the song of poetry and of music. We're commemorating today not just April 19th and the armed resistance in the Warsaw Ghetto. We're commemorating, as Marcel very much said, the spirit of resistance. Nicht nur Aufstand, nur euch Widerstand, the spirit of resistance that that was expressed by so many people in the ghetto in so many ways. And the song, poetry, whether it's Avrom Sutzkever's poetry or anyone writing and creating, was an expression. We're not just fighting to fight, we're fighting for values. And among those values, there are values of the spirit. Verbinden dem Nächten mit dem Heint. Among those values are not to lose sake of our heritage. And that is why, for me, the work done in the Vilna Ghetto to rescue Jewish books and documents is the paramount expression of spiritual and moral resistance. Verbinden dem Nächten mit dem Heint. Ich will verendigen mit ein paar Wörter auf Jiddisch. Als euch, wie Marcel hat gesagt, Widerstand ist nicht ein Ingen von Rateven sich allein. Rateven das eigene Leben. Sei bewaffneter Widerstand, sei der moralische, geistige Widerstand, seinen Gewinn ausdrücken von Sach breitere und tiefere Sachen wie Rateven das eigene Leben. Man hat gewollt Weisen der Welt machen, einen symbolischen Aussage zu der Welt. Wer ist denn in Jiden? Was ist das jüdische Volk? Man hat gewollt leben mit Würde und umkommen mit Würde. Und man hat gewollt schicken a Gruß kommende Gedeures. Uns, das heißt die Kinder und die Einekoch, schicken an Ansag und a Gruß. Also ich mir dürfen verbinden unser Leben mit geistigen Werten, verbinden dem Nächten mit dem Heint. Und also ich mir dürfen abgeben unser Leben nicht nur sich, nur andere, dem ganzen jüdischen Volk und der ganzen Menschheit. Also ich hoffe, es heint in unserer schweren Lage, unsere allem schweren Lage, weil wir hören dem Klang von dem Bix, von dem Aufstand, aber wir werden euch hören dem Klang von dem Lied, von Hirschglück und von der Jugend. Seid gegrüßt und seid gebencht.
Herzlichen Dank, David. And now we welcome our friend Irena Klepfisz. Irena is a distinguished poet who was born in the Warsaw Ghetto, and her father, Marcel Kshensky, died fighting in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. She taught women's studies at Barnard College, served as executive director for New Jewish Agenda, and serves on the board of the Workers' Circle. Irena will be reading an excerpt from Chava Rosenfarb's Bergen-Belsen Displaced Persons Diary. Irena?
In 1941, when she was just 17 years old, Chava Rosenfarb, together with her family, were incarcerated in the Lodz Ghetto. There, under the mentorship of the poet Simcha Bunim Shayevich, Chava became the youngest member of the ghetto's writing and cultural circle. Following the ghetto's liquidation in 1944, she and her family were transported first to Auschwitz, where they were separated from her father, then to Sasasol, and finally to Bergen-Belsen. Chava survived and eventually emigrated to Canada. Today, she is internationally recognized as one of the great Yiddish writers of the 20th century. Her best-known work is her monumental 3-volume novel about life in the Lodz Ghetto, entitled Der Boim von Leben. It was in the Bergen-Belsen DP camp that Chava kept a diary from May to September 1945. The following excerpts reveal how the 22-year-old Chava, now suddenly a survivor, tried to absorb what she had lived through, and how she anticipated the impossibility of conveying the experiences and details of the Churban. The translated English version of the diary appears in her collection, Confessions of a Yiddish Writer and Other Essays. Bergen-Belsen, 5. Mai 1945. Wo bist du, Tate? Wo bist du, Tate? Heint ist das erste Mal, wo ich nehm die Blei in Hand. Es zittern meine Finger über den weißen Papier. Wo ist ein warme, sichere Hand, wo soll herumnehmen meine fieberige Finger und öffnen für die Öffnei, auf die Öffnei, der Sod von unser heiligen jüdischen Alphabets. Also wie einmal, wenn ich gewesen ein Kind, deine breite Arme haben herumgespart mein Kopf, dein warmer Atem hat gezärtelt meine Backen. Du hast geführt meine Hand über weiße, säubere Schuhe. Tate haben mir geschrieben. Uns ist aufgegangen ein Licht von die 4 kleinen Äußers, bis das Wort hat eine Schamme bekommen, bis hab in ihm dein Schmeichel der Sinn. Tate. Bergen-Belsen, May 6, 1945. Today, for the first time, I hold a pencil in my hand. My fingers tremble over the white sheet of paper. Where is your warm, sure hand to cover my trembling fingers and lead them again to open the sacred doors of our Yiddish alphabets? When I was a little girl, you guided my hand over the neat white lines. We wrote the word Tata, and there rose such a light from those 4 small letters that the word itself acquired a soul, and I saw that soul reflected in your loving smile. Tata. I sit near a window. The branches of the large chestnut tree outside reach up to the 2nd floor where we are staying. Today I can see the sky, and it is the purest blue. Perhaps it is just an ordinary blue sky with nothing remarkable about it. But I see the sky as it must have looked to the first human being when he suddenly recognized God and genuflected before the beautiful blue expanse that stretched above his head. I want to write, how beautiful you are, blue sky. But instead, I see your luminous eyes. I can feel your blessings and your dreams, your smile and your longing. June 26th. What lovely days we are having. Everything is green. Blossoms fall from the trees, gathering into the white carpets under every tree trunk. Those trees which have not yet shed their blossoms look like religious Jews slowly preparing to remove their prayer shawls. But what am I saying? These are just ordinary trees losing their blossoms. It is impossible to compare them to anything else. The sense of awe belongs to those of us who observe them. We are like children. Every day we make new discoveries. The joy of awakening makes us drunk. It is good to be able to breathe, to feel, to see, to hear. It is good to be able to eat, to be able to bite into a chunk of bread. We perform this sacred ritual with wild animal joy and a sense of religious duty. 30th of June. I wonder if there will ever be an all-encompassing literary masterpiece that recreates the past. I doubt it. Who can bring back the terror of those ghetto days? Days like those can only be described as they are happening with sharp, bated breath, just as the writers and painters did in the ghetto. When one has distance, one can only remember fragments of the whole, but that memory lacks the pulse of the trembling, feverish present. How can one construct an artistic history of the ghetto? Would such a work not mask the raw immediacy with which one must approach this topic? Is not the form of the novel too elegant, too peaceful, too comfortable, too quiet? I feel that to write such a novel would be an insult to my dear ones and also to myself. August 28th. We are back in the camp. Why am I telling all this anyway? For 4 long weeks, we trudged all over Germany. We got lifts on coal wagons, hitched rides with lorries packed with horses. We walked for miles, tired, frightened, with an uneasy feeling in our hearts. We were not the only ones on the road. We met hundreds of lonely children just like us, hundreds of wandering fathers, hundreds of solitary wives. It was all for nothing. Somewhere, perhaps in a forest or in a field, lies the mutilated body of our father. Perhaps we passed the very spot and did not hear the mute call of his body. He did not live long enough to feel our arms around his neck. We never even had the chance to kiss his wounds. We looked for Simcha Bunim Shaivich, but that too was a fruitless search. Perhaps somewhere a breeze blew past us carrying the breath of his burned body, but we did not feel it. When we returned to the camp, the bad news was waiting for us, brought by a friend who has survived. We have recovered a friend, but we have lost our father. Joy and sorrow. Why does the poor heart not break in agony? Our friend found our names on the list. He told us that father perished a day before the liberation, killed when an American bomb landed on the train that the Germans were using to transport Dachau prisoners deeper into Germany. Shayevich was taken during the very last selection to the gas chamber. There is nobody left anymore for whom to wait.
Thank you, Irena. And now we welcome Deborah Strauss. Deborah is a teacher at the Worker Circle Midtown Shule, is an internationally acclaimed klezmer violinist and educator. She is a member of the Strauss Warsaw Duo and was a longtime member of the Klezmer Conservatory Band. Deborah will be singing the Jugendhymn, Wörter by Shmelke Kaczerginski, music von Basia Ruben.
Unser Lied ist voll mit Treue, dreist ist unser Untergang. Hotsch der Säune wacht beim Teuer, stürmt Jugend mit Gesang. Weil jung ist jeder, wer es will noch. Jungen haben kein Bartheit. Alte kennen euch sein Kinder von einer freier Zeit. Wer es wohlt Wegen, wer mit Dreistkeit stellt sein Fuß, bringt die Jugend ihm entgegen von dem Ghetto a Geruss. Weil jung ist jeder, wer es will noch. Jahren haben kein Bartheit. Alte kennen euch sein Kinder von einer freier Zeit. Wir gedenken alle Sonnen, wir Dämonen, alle Freit. Ewig werden wir verbinden unsere Nächten mit Heid. Weil jung ist jeder, wer es will noch. Jungen haben kein Bartheit. Alte kennen euch sein Kinder von einer freier Zeit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deborah. Now Carrie Chanin will sing a song for us. Carrie has performed in opera, musical theater, recitals, and oratorio at venues including Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, Town Hall, and Volksbühne. In remembrance of her beloved camp director, Michael Barron, who taught her this song, Carrie will be singing Unter die Poylishe Grininke Beymelekh, words by Joseph Papiernikov and Israel Alto.
Unter die Poylishe Grininke Beymelekh schwirren sich mehr nicht, kein Mäuscheret Schleumelach. Schwirren sich mehr nicht, kein Sorel Gleilach, nicht auf kein Gräselach, nicht auf kein Schneeloch. Es hilft uns scheinbar nicht die jüdische Stimme von die Kundesimach, Motelach, Schimmelach, mit die Zekrell, der zerdroppete Zurelach, von dem Beweisen von Derim und Gvorelach. Sroja sind die Poylishe Beymelekh, teut seinen jüdische Himmel und Himmelach, teut seinen Gerselach oder die Heiselach, wo es verstärken sich Kinder wie Meiselach, jüdische Kinder wie große Egelach, schwarze Säule wie mir Heuschel verzeugene, Egelach Fuhle wie Papat verlorene, unter dem Unglück, dem Breiden getroffene. Unter die Poylishe Grininke Beymelekh spielten sich mehr nicht kein Michalach, Rivgelach. Spielten sich mehr nicht kein Sorelach, Leilach. Nicht auf kein Gräselach, nicht auf kein Schneelach.
Lovely. And now we have Shane Baker, who will be reading a selection for us. Shane serves as director of the Congress for Jewish Culture. Shane?
When the announcement went out for this year's event, I received a note from the journalist Annette Friedman saying she thought I might like to read a piece she had about her uncle, Yankl Rabinowitz, a Hasidic Jew of rabbinic pedigree. He was the son of the Parcheva Rebbe and the grandson of the Bialik Rebbe, a brother-in-law to the Munkacher Rebbe. And of the 700,000 to 900,000 Jews sent to Treblinka, Reb Yankl is one of only 67 who escaped it alive. All others perished. Thanks to this entry in Dr. Hillel Seidman's Diary of the Warsaw Ghetto, we can hear a little bit of Reb Yankl's story. In the first of the two excerpts, he is placed on the train to Treblinka. Wie ihr wisst, bin ich gehabt geworden bei einer Blockade von dem Shop Landau auf Gensche. Bald wie wir sind gekommen auf einen Umschlag, hat man uns reingeführt in Waggonen, welche sind schon gestanden gerät. 4 Waggonen sind das gewesen, 100 Menschen leerig in einem Wagen. Junge, alte, Männer, Frauen, Kinder, Kranke, Gesunde, alle ungestoppt in Wagen. Die Engschaft ist schrecklich, die Hitze nicht zu ertragen. Wir gestanden, gepresst einer zum anderen, nicht gekonzentrieren, nicht gekannt bewegen mit kein Schumever. Der Schweiß hat von uns gerinnen. Schwer wird gewesen, abzuatmen. Ich fühle schrecklich Durst. Der Gummen ist vertrocknet, die Lippen vertrocknet. Der Meuch klärt nur wegen einer Sache, ein bisschen Wasser, ein bisschen Wasser. Es ist aber an uns ist der Cholm. Nicht doch ein bisschen Wasser, nicht doch. Also sind wir gestanden bei 4 Stunden. Bis wann wird man uns da so halten? Wird es noch lang dauern? Wollen wir noch lang aushalten? Und das sind gewähnte Fragen, welche haben uns gebeuert, dem Meuch. Neben mir gestanden eine Frau, und 3 Kinderlach. Alle haben geweint, jammerlach, verzweifelt. Das Kleinste von hat 2 Jahre alt, hat nicht aufgehört, über zu chassern auf Poylishe. Peach, Peach, trinken, trinken. Ich habe schon vergessen in mein eigener Durst und genommen trachten, wie nimmt man ein bisschen Wasser von verhallischten Heferle? Ich fühle, als ich will es nicht überhalten. Ich kann nicht zusehen dem Zar von einem Kind. Was tut man? Was tut man? Aber der Wagen nicht vermacht, verschlossen, verplombiert. Bloß durch ein schmalen Fenster, zu welchen unsere Kette der Geichen käum, dringen durch etliche Strahlen und die Gewähnen und Jammern von Weiber und Kinder, welche man treibt in die Waggonen. I'll pause here to comment that some survivors have remarked that the train was the most nightmarish part of their journey. And I find it noteworthy that even in this miserable situation, Rabbi Yankl could at least temporarily forget his own trouble long enough to worry instead about a little girl, the daughter of a stranger, getting some water. The train, of course, was bound for Treblinka, and those who survived the trip were driven to the showers on arrival for gassing. Yankl, however, held back and was selected by the Germans along with several other young able-bodied men for the Sonderkommando to clean up the effects of the other victims. He describes the cries of the Jews from his transport as they were murdered en masse, and then continues. Das hat so gedauert an 15 Minuten. Dennoch ist entstanden eine meure dicke Stillkeit. Man hat nicht gehört, kein Schorch. Weil keiner von uns hat nicht gelost fallen ein Wort. Plötzlich hat sich bewiesen für uns ein deutscher Offizier und uns geheißen reingehen in der großen Halle, welche wir haben nur was gehabt verlost. Sie ist schon gewesen im ganzen ledig und Post. Bloß auf der Erde und auf die Bank sind gelegen Pintelach mit Ungetichts, mit Gepäck. Teil Ungetichts sind gewesen sorgfältig, pinklach, säuber zu neu gestellt. Auf der Teil sind noch viele gewesen zubeheft, Zetteln mit Namen von den Eigentümern. Bis zu der letzten Minute hat man geglebt, gehofft, genarrt sich, mit noch zurückkommen. Man hat uns befeuillen zu neu nehmen die Kleider, Schich und Päcklach, sie zusammenlegen und sie reintragen in den oberseits geledigten Waggonen, in welchen wir sind gekommen zu fahren. Ich tue apathisch, was mir heißt mir, und schon Willen, und Sinn, griesach wie ein Automat. Meine Aufgabe ist zu neu nehmen die Schich. Ich sammle die Schich. Schich, kleine Kindersche. Zarte, Schich große, Männersche, Schich elegante, luxuriöse, Schich abgetragene, zerrissene Stiefel, hochwohljungerische Teire, Pantoffeldine, ausgetrottene Orme Schich, wie viel Tritt, jogenisch und läufenisch, sie haben durchgemacht, bis sie haben durchgespannt am letzten Weg. Wir nehmen zusammen die Schich, dann die Kleider, man heißt mir sie verpacken. Sie arbeiten mit uns zusammen etliche polylische Arbeiter. Ich nutze euch das Vergucken sich von unserem deutschen Offizier und stelle Frage einem von den Poljaken, was kommt da vor? Solche Geschreien hören mir jeden Tag, antwortet mir, etliche Mal im Tag. Ich bin schon groß von die Keules, gewollt antläufen nicht gekonnt, allein ein politischer Arrestierter. Eins bin ich schon ein bisschen zugewohnt, aber die Nacht sind schrecklich. Bei Nacht in Holm hören mich nicht auf zu peinigen die Keules. Nicht auf was zu reden geht macht mit der Hand von dort, weist auf in Barak Nummer 3, kommt keiner nicht heraus, a Lebediker. 10.000 a Tag, endigt 10.000. Das ist der Kontingent. Also viel werden vergast, tagtäglich, seit Wochen. Yankl Rabinowitz could see the future that awaited him, even as a worker. So he hid in the clothing and he escaped. And he went back to the Warsaw Ghetto to warn the Jews there of what was happening at Treblinka. He gave the interview, parts of which you just heard, to Dr. Hillel Seidman. He also gave testimony for Emanuel Ringelblum's Einig Shabbos archive. And on the first night of Passover in 1943, the 19th of April, having volunteered to climb the ghetto wall in the first wave of fighting, he was killed 77 years ago tonight. Kavod sein ondenk, kavod zeer ondenk.
Dank Shane. And now we welcome 8 students from the Manhattan Worker Circle School who will be reading a Vagon Shikh by Avrom Sutzkever, first in Yiddish and then in English translation. The students are, in reading order, Bernadette Freitstern, Naomi Steckel, Ariella Alexander, Nathan Foster, Jojo Gelman, Naomi Shana Cross, and Evan Liam Bunnage. Whenever you're ready.
Die Räder jagen, was bringen sie mit sich? Sie bringen mir a Wagen mit zappelndiger Schiff. Die Wagen wie a Kuppe in oventigen Glanz. Die Schiff a volle Kuppe wie Menschen in a Tanz. A Chassene, a Jontiv, sie hat mich wer verblendet. Die Schiff a so eine Nonte aufs Neue hab erkennt. Es klappen die Obtassen, wohin, wohin, wohin? Von alter Wilner Gassen, mit Treibs und kein Berlin.
Nor stut in Harz Aris. O, sagt mir Shikh dem Emes, zu seinem See, die Fies. Sie fies von jene Tufe, Beymelekh Betoi. Und da, wo ist das Ufer? Die Freude. In Kindershikh in alle, wo seh ich nicht kein Kind. Was tut nicht an die Kalle, die Schichelach estin. Der Kindershikh und Schabes, der kennt mein Mames Shikh. Die fleckt sie bloß auf Schabes, ruhig ziehen auf sich. Und klappen die Obsassen, wohin, wohin, wohin. Von alte Wilner Gassen, mit uns kein Blau.
The wheels are turning, turning. What are they bringing with them? They're bringing me a wagon load of trembling shoes. The wagon is like a wedding canopy in the evening glow. The shoes, a full load, like people at the dance.
A wedding, a holiday, or has someone struck me blind? The shoes, such familiar ones, I recognize anew. The heels are tapping. Where to? Where? Where? From the old Vilna streets, they're driving us to Berlin.
I need not ask whose, but I get a clamp in my heart. Oh, tell me, shoes, the truth, where are the feet? Feet are stamping there with buttons like dewdrops. And here, where's the little body and where is the bride?
Among all the children's shoes, why don't I see any children? Why doesn't the bride put on her shoes now? Among the children's shoes and other old shoes, I recognize my mother's shoes. She used to put them on only on Shabbat.
And the heels tap. Where to? Where? From the old Vilna streets. They're driving us to Berlin.
Shenim Dan Kinderlach. And now Shifee Losacco will sing a song for us. Shifee has sung with choirs and as a featured soloist at Lincoln Center, Yiddish theater productions on Broadway, and is currently a soloist with the Piece of Heart Choir who perform in underserved communities throughout the 5 boroughs. Shifee is singing Kh'heys Yisrolik, Wörter von Leib Rosenthal, Musik von Misha Wechsler.
Nu kaufsche Papierossen, nu kaufsche Sacharin, geworden ist Heinz Reure billig wert. A Leben war a Groschen, a Brute Verdienst, von Ghettohändler hat ihr doch gehört. Kh'heys Yisrolik, ich bin das Kind von Ghetto. Kh'heys Yisrolik, a heftiger Jung, hat verblieben, Gollenetto, der lang ich als noch hat zwischte und a Sung. A Mantel und a Kragen, Tachtoinen von a Sack, Kaloschen hab ich, 12 nordisch. Und wer es wird nur warten, zu lachen, neuer Sach, dem will ich noch weisen, wer bin ich. Kh'heys Yisrolik, ich bin das Kind von Ghetto. Kh'heys Yisrolik, a heftiger Jung, hat verblieben, Gollenetto, der lang ich als noch hat zwischte und a Sung. Mit Beit mich hat geboren, die heftige Gas, seit hatte Mame euch gewinn a Kind. Hab beide Hand geboren, nicht meint es ist a Spaß, ich bin geblieben wie im Feld der Wind. Kh'heys Yisrolik, nur wenn keiner sieht nicht, fisch ich still sich von euch, aber treff, nur von mein Treue, besser als man redt nicht, zu was der Monnen und machen's hart sich schwer. Nur von mein Treue, besser als man redt nicht, zu was der Monnen und machen's hart sich schwer.
Thank you so much, Shifee. Now we have Maida Feingold, who will sing for us. Maida is an accomplished singer-guitarist with a bilingual repertoire of English and Yiddish songs. She frequently performs at music festivals in New York City, at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, with traveling Yiddish theatrical groups, and in solo concert. Maida is singing Unter deine weiße Stern, Wörter von Avrom Sutzkever, Musik von Avrom Boortz.
Unter deine weiße Stern streckt zu mir dein weiße Hand. Meine Werte seinen Tern wirren in dein Hand. Es dunkelt sehr finkel in mein kellerdicken Blick, und ich hab gar nicht kein Winkel, sei zu schenken dir zurück, und ich hab gar nicht kein Winkel, sei zu schenken dir zurück. Und ich will doch Gott getreu dir vertreuet mein Vermeg, weil es mont in mir auf Feuer und in Feuer meine Tag. läuf ich hecher über Dächer und ich such, wo bist du, wo? Läuf ich hecher über Dächer und ich such, wo bist du, wo? Nehmen jagen mich Mischone, Torp und Häufen mit Gewoi. Häng ich an der Platz der Sterne und ich sing zu dir so. Unter deiner weiße Stern streckt zu mir dein weiße Hand. Meine Welten seinen Tränen will ruhen in deiner Hand. Meine Welten seinen Tränen will ruhen in deiner Hand. Unter deine weiße Stern streckt zu mir dein weiße Hand.
Thank you so much, Maida. Und jetzt treten Yankl Jacobs. Yankl is professor of political science at John Jay College and the CUNY Graduate Center. He is the author of numerous books, including On Socialists and the Jewish Question After Marx, and Bundes Counterculture in Interwar Poland. Yankl?
This talk is entitled 4 Moments: Fear, Flight, Sheltering, Community. Moment 1, fear. When I was an adolescent, it often seemed to me that my parents were afraid of almost everything. They were certainly afraid of potentially risky physical activities, but they were also afraid of attracting attention, of speaking out too loudly about public affairs, and of making moves that presupposed a long-term, stable future. They never said so, and I never asked, but over time, as I grew older, I began to realize that their fearfulness was certainly linked to their experiences during the Second World War. Having suffered great trauma, great loss, years of hunger and of fear in their younger years, it eventually dawned on me, and yes, this took time in my case, that just about anything that could have rocked the boat, the tiny nest they had created for themselves and their children, was to be avoided at all costs. And still, I would note, even when I came to have some understanding of the origins of their fear, it continued to strike me as not fully warranted. After all, America was not Poland or the USSR. But I have to say that I have experienced fear myself in recent months. Fear for my life, but perhaps even more, fear for the health and lives of my loved ones. Everyone I know has felt similarly. My spouse, Susan, tells me that I've been shouting in my sleep, that I clearly have been having bad dreams. And it's true, I've become fearful, and not merely on an unconscious or subconscious level. The fear is existential. Everything I have read about what it means to have a severe case of COVID-19 instills fear. And the fear extends to other parts of my life. I'm fearful for this country. Fundamental norms and institutions that long made me feel it can't happen here now strike me as far more fragile than I had imagined. A televised version of Philip Roth's The Plot Against America has been broadcast over the past few weeks, and I'm afraid, I don't use the word lightly, that a contemporary modified version of some of the events depicted by Roth doesn't seem so very far-fetched to me at this stage of the game. Moment 2, flight. When the Second World War began, my father was in Warsaw, the city in which he was born and raised. He was picked up by a German forced labor battalion immediately after the occupation of Warsaw, but he knew his city well and was able to slip away from his captors, went back to his parents' apartment and announced in no uncertain terms that it was time to leave. His parents replied that they were not prepared to go. Among other things, they wanted to sell a few possessions. They owned a brass headboard in order to amass a little cash. But my father declared that the time had come and, together with a couple of other young men, smuggled himself out of Warsaw. He never saw his parents again. In the period from late 1939 to mid-1941, my mother was in the portion of pre-war Poland that had been annexed by the USSR in the wake of the Hitler-Stalin Pact. When Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the USSR, began and the Luftwaffe started bombing and strafing runs over what had been Eastern Poland, virtually the entire heavily Jewish population of the town in which my mother was living, Witz, left the center of town. They spent the first night following the invasion in woods on the side of a road. In the morning, just about everyone else decided that they should go back into Witz and gather their things before figuring out what to do next. But my grandmother, Sivya, insisted absolutely not, and declared that she, my mother, and my mother's younger sister, Rade, were going east immediately. They survived. Hardly anyone else from Witz made it through the next 4 years. How does one know when it's time to leave? In early March, my son called one evening and said he wanted to come over, and when he arrived, he stated that it was time to leave New York, and that he and his wife, Abby, and their newborn son were heading out. He asked us to come, but I said that I preferred to stay. He followed up with a few questions in order to make sure that we had provisions and a plan in case we became ill. But after it became clear to him that I was not going to be dissuaded from my position, he went home, packed essential items, and drove all night to the Midwest. My son, daughter-in-law, and grandson have a secure place to stay in an area experiencing only a tiny fraction of the number of infections we have seen in New York. It was a prudent move on Michel's part. And I suppose it remains to be seen whether I was, as my mother always insisted, zu eingespannt, overly stubborn. Moment 3, sheltering. My parents had friends who survived by sheltering in place. Fritzi was from Austria, Bert from Czechoslovakia. Independently of one another, they made it as far as Amsterdam, where they became a couple. When the Germans occupied the Netherlands, Bertie, who was partially of Jewish origin and partially of non-Jewish origin, and who as a result could, as they said, pass, built an additional wall in their room. Fritzi, from that time on, spent her days hidden between the fake wall and the original, while Bertie went off to work. I never asked Bertie whether his Czech-accented Dutch raised any questions, but I can only imagine that there was a continual risk that he would be found out. This situation was sustained for some time until Fritzi not only became pregnant, but gave birth to a child, Peter. Keeping a newborn silent between the two walls was just not tenable. And so, with help from the Dutch underground, Peter was spirited out of the apartment and spent the rest of the war with a non-Jewish family who raised him as one of their own. Fritzi and Bertie and Peter all survived. The importance of having a safe place to shelter has become all too manifest in the last month or so. I'm not at all concerned about my own situation in this regard. Sheltering in place while having access to a high-speed internet connection, a Netflix subscription, direct deposit of my paycheck every 2 weeks, and regular deliveries from upscale groceries has nothing in common with the situations that confronted any number of my family's friends and relatives during the Holocaust. But there's a parallel between Belti and people all around me. My ability to shelter is dependent on delivery people and postal workers and others who risk their health and their lives precisely by doing their jobs. They need to work and are doing what they need to do. Many people in our city, especially poor people and people of color, I'm all too well aware, simply can't shelter in place. The death rate among Blacks and Latinos in our city speaks for itself. Moment 4, community. Even in the worst of times, the Bundists sought out one another. On May Day in 1944, Bundists still in Warsaw organized gatherings in 4 different apartments, at Miadowa 24, Chłodny 17, and on Nowogrodzkie and Żelazne. At all of these meetings, simply gathering, it's reported, led to an immediate dramatic improvement in the moods of those assembled. There was a feierliche Stimmung. It was as if it was a holiday. And in one of the apartments, there was a radio, which someone present turned on without prior arrangement while the gathering was underway. To the great delight of the assembled Bundists, speaking on the radio at exactly that moment was none other than Dr. Emanuel Scherer, the representative of the Bund to the London-based Polish government in exile. Some of us remember Dr. Scherer's very distinctive voice and can well imagine the feelings that it provoked. In his broadcast, which had been aimed precisely at whomever of his comrades might happen to catch it, Dr. Scherer comforted and encouraged and greeted those who were listening without knowing precisely who they might be. And he did so, since it was May Day, in the name of the international proletariat and in the name of all enemies of Nazism. By all accounts, this broadcast helped the surviving Bundists, reaffirming in them their sense of community and of common ideals. And isn't that precisely what we're attempting to do right now? We gather here virtually because remembering together is better than remembering alone, and because we continue to share common ideals. The existence of all of you matters a great deal to all the rest of us. And so even in the midst of pandemic, we assert at this moment, wir seien da.
So much, Yankl. Now, Annette Bialik Harchik will read for us. Annette is an educator, poet, and Yiddish teacher currently working as a learning specialist at the Dwight School in Manhattan. Annette will be reading a memorial prayer by Abba Kovner.
A memorial prayer by Abba Kovner. Let us remember our brothers and sisters, their cities and villages, the town's noisy streets, the lonely village inn, the distinguished old men, a young girl with her braids, an infant. All of the Jewish communities with their thousands of families, a whole Jewish existence sentenced to death on the European continent by the Nazi executioner. The sudden outcry of a man who died, the woman who cradled her baby till her arms dropped, the infant seeking its mother's breast when it was cold and blue. The feet, those feet trying to escape but could not. Fists full of steel, the steel becoming weapons of despair, vision, and rebellion. Those heroes of the heart, open-eyed, daring, gave their lives, but could not gain a victory. Let us remember the day at noontime when the sun gazed down on the slaughter from high in the silent sky. Let us remember the pile of ashes under the blossoming gardens and the dead who stare at us. They look from all sides, calling out for revenge, and let us, with our lives, bear witness and be their memorial.
Thank you, Annette. Now our friend Joanne Boortz will sing. Joanne is a New York-based Broadway actor and singer who appeared in the Yiddish Fiddler on the Roof and also recently in the Broadway production of Once. Joanne is singing Stremlen Fegel, Wörter von Leah Rudnitsky, Musik von L. Jampolsky.
Stremlen Fegel auf die Zweigen, schlaf mein teuer Kind, schlaf mein teuer Kind, bei dein Wegel auf dein Haare sitzt der Fremde und singt. Bei dein Wegel auf dein Haare sitzt der Fremde und singt. Lulu, Lulu, S'ist dein Wegel gestanden, ois geflochten von Glück, ois geflochten von Glück, und dein Mame, oi dein Mame, komm schon keinmal nicht zurück. Und dein Mame, oi dein Mame, kommt schon keinmal nicht zurück. Lulu, Lulu, Lulu. Hab gesehen dein Taten laufen unter Hagel von Stein, unter Hagel von Stein, über Felder ist geflogen sein verjossente Gewein. Über Felder ist geflogen sein verjossente Gewein. Lulu, Lulu, Lulu,
Thank you, Joanne. Before we conclude our program today, I'd like to ask Fegele Jacobs to share two greetings we received from the organizers of April 19th gatherings that are occurring today in Warsaw and Melbourne. Fegele?
Thank you, Marcel. The first greeting is from the organizers of the independent commemoration of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in Warsaw. It is written by Poylishe, a close friend of the late Mata Gettleman, who was a member of Jugendbund Zukunft and a leader of the uprising. Paula writes, every April 19th at 12 noon, Mata Gettleman was present at the monument to the ghetto heroes. Following his death, the responsibility of remembrance rests with us and future generations. We are unable to attend the 77th anniversary of the Ghetto Uprising, and yet we do not resign paying homage to those of whom Marek said, and I quote, "Here I am standing all alone, totally by chance, as I have found myself in various places all my life. The universe was also probably created by chance. Behind me, there is nothingness and oblivion. The nothingness which took hundreds of thousands of people whom I had accompanied to the cattle trains. I have no right to speak on their behalf because I don't know if they were dying full of hatred or forgiveness toward their executioners. No one will ever know. My duty is to guard their memory. All I know is that we need to remember these women, children, old and young people who went to the nothingness, who were murdered for no reason. I know that this is what we need to remember," end quote. Let their memory endure. The independent Polish commemoration is taking place later today, and we will share a link on Facebook with everyone. We also received greetings from our Chaverim at the Jewish Labor Bund in Melbourne. Razel Zilberman shared this greeting on their behalf. Razel writes, 2020 marks the 70th anniversary of SCIF in Melbourne. The SCIF logo, as many Hemshechisten will know, is the red falcon. The falcon, of course, holds great symbolism, being a bird which flies against the wind. Indeed, this characterizes the history of the Bund and SCIF, which has always fought against oppression. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is one of the greatest examples within our organization's history of the falcon in full flight. In 1943, under the most horrifying circumstances, young Jews from a variety of Jewish organizations, including, of course, the Bund, Zukunft, and SCIF, rose up to fight for Jewish honor. They fought with dignity. We are inspired by the actions of our Chaverim, who risked their lives to fight and those who risked their lives to save others. In Melbourne, our annual Warsaw Ghetto Uprising commemoration, held on April 19th, is marked by a cross-generational commemoration. Members of the Bund community, including members of our youth group SCIF, joined together to recite poetry, sing songs, light candles, and to speak about this important moment in our collective history. We not only do this to remember our Chaverim, who fought bravely during the uprising, we do not just do this to remember all those who were killed during the uprising and indeed during the Holocaust. We also do this in order to remember that even in the darkest of times, even when faced with oppression, it is important to resist and to fight for human dignity. For many of us around the world, April 19th is a heilige date, a holy date. Though separated by time zones and distance, and indeed this year, physically separated even within our own communities, we stand together on this day. We share in your commemoration, and we know that you share in our commemoration. May our presence, even online, ensure that the memories of the martyrs of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising are honored and not forgotten. May we continue to honor their memories through our continued efforts to fight for Freiheit, freedom, Gleichheit, equality, and Gerechtigkeit, justice. Kavod Zeil Undenk.
Thank you, Fegele. And now to close our program, we call on Zalman Lutek. Zalman is conductor, pianist, musical arranger, accompanist, composer, and the artistic director of the National Yiddish Theater Volksbühne. He's an internationally recognized authority on Yiddish folk and theater music and a leading figure in the Jewish theater and concert worlds. The words for the two songs will appear in transliteration on your screen. Please stand if you can, as Zalman leads us in singing the Partizane hymn, music by Hirsch Glick, music by Hirsch Glick, words by Dmitri Pokras, and the Bundische Schwue, words and music by S. Ansky. Zalman, whenever you're ready.
Words by Hirsch Glick and melody by Dmitri Pokras. Zog dit keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Gott schimmeln bleiene, verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen weg noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird ab heute von unser Trott, wir seinen da. Kommen weg noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird ab heute von unser Trott, wir seinen da. Von grünem Palmenland bis weißen Land. Wir kommen an mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen ist Spritz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Glaube, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen ist Spritz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Glaube, unser Mut. Es wird die Morgensonne begilden uns dem Heind. Und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Neu versammeln wird die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wie ein Parol so gehen das Lied von Dort zu Dort. Neu versammeln wird die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wie ein Parol so gehen das Lied von Dort zu Dort. Geschrieben ist das Lied mit Blut und nicht mit Leid. Es ist nicht kein Liedl von a Vogel auf der Frei. Das hat a Volk zwischen Frauen gewähnt. Das Lied gesungen mit na Ganes in die Hand. Doch hat a Volk zwischen Frauen gewähnt. Das Lied gesungen mit na Ganes in die Hand. Das sag nicht einmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Gott schimmeln bleiene, verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen weg noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird ab heute an unser Trott bis einen Tag. Kommen weg noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird ab heute an unser Trott bis einen Tag. Und Arbeit und Neu. Alle, was sehnen, sie seht und sie spricht. Zusammen, zusammen, die Frauen ist gerät. Sie flattert von Sorgen, von Blut ist sie reut. A Schwur, a Flem und Heut. Himmel und Erd, wird uns heute weg. Jedes wird sein, die richtige Stelle. A Schwur von Blut, a Schwur von Tränen. Wir schwören, wir schwören, wir schwören. Wir schwören a Freiheit und Grenzen zum Bund. Nur kennt die Sklaven, befreien als sind. Die von die Reute ist hoch und breit. Sie flattert von Sorgen, von Blut ist sie reut. A Schwur, a Flem und Heut. Himmel und Erd, wird uns heute weg. Jedes wird sein, die richtige Stelle. A Schwur von Blut, a Schwur von Tränen. Wir schwören, wir schwören, wir schwören.
Zalman, thank you so much for leading us in those two songs. Before we conclude, I just want to let folks know that on April 21st, this Tuesday at 11 in the morning, there will be a presentation by the Los Angeles Museum of the Holocaust entitled Holocaust Resistance in Yiddish Poetry and Song, featuring Mike Burston. Please look for that link. We'll be posting it after our event has concluded. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. On behalf of our organizing committee, Shane Baker, Fegele Jacobs, Irena Klepfisz, myself, Marcel Kshensky, and Moshe Rosenfeld, I'd like to thank all our participants for creating the event. And of course, I'd like to thank our sponsoring organizations, the Congress for Jewish Culture, Friends of the Jewish Labor Bund, the Jewish Labor Committee, the Workers' Circle, and the Evo Institute for Jewish Research for making today's program possible. We'll be posting fuller bios of our participants at the end of our program, as well as a brief history of our annual gathering. We'll also be posting a link to the Congress for Jewish Culture website, where you can download a copy of the commemorative book we published in 2018 on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. We hope that next year we will see you in person when we can once again gather at Der Stein. Thank you so much all for joining us, and please stay safe.